Welcome back, my fellow duplicants, to another experiment here in the oxygen not included. In the last experiment here, we started to look at mealwood and letting it rot to produce polluted dirt that the hatch ate and produced coal. Now, that was an interesting experiment. However, many, and I mean many of you guys commented talking about what about making it into fertilizer or this other stuff, or producing polluted water, producing everything. And the answer is there is a ton of stuff you could do with just letting mealwood rot. Once you get to polluted dirt, suddenly the world opens up into all these different possibilities that you can actually do with it. So much so that I've actually tried to record this episode multiple times and failed because my brain got in a brain twister. So I've had to think of 3 different ways that we're going to do this. And first and foremost, we're going to do the simple method. We're going to convert this polluted oxygen into oxygen, but we're not going to use a system that is going to cool it down to liquid oxygen and then boil it off. We're actually going to use other equipment. So, in order to do something like that, what we're essentially going to do is process this using a algae distiller. They've changed the name on this stuff, so if I mess it up, y'all can correct me down below. So an algae distiller will essentially process slime. So we're going to use a puff inside of this farm because each time this mealwood essentially rots, it makes a little rot pile, it makes a little bit of polluted dirt, and that polluted dirt gives off polluted oxygen. So there's several things that are going into this that we needed to understand, or I needed to understand, in order to make an accurate video for you. So the hatch, which I've already done the experimenting on this in my own time here, and the several times I've tried to make this video, essentially all it does is convert whatever sort of resource you put inside of here, not food, not anything you eat, but something like obsidian, dirt, polluted dirt, whatever, at a 1-to-1 ratio. So just to kind of show you that to you, I'm going to spawn in a fresh hatch here and show you exactly how this works. So I have a hatch right down here. Okay, so we get a nice fresh one. I'm going to paint in 200 kilograms of dirt. And then I will clear my selection, use the dig tool. This will leave me with exactly 100 kilograms of dirt. So when this hatch eats this, you should see that it'll convert it to coal. So come on, hatch, get hungry. You know you want it. Come on, buddy. What is up with this hatch? I found a hatch that doesn't want to eat anything. This is the one time I need you to do what you're supposed to do. Okay, let's try this again. There goes some dirt, 100 kilograms. Seriously, what is wrong with this hatch? Bro, just eat. Okay, whatever, I'll switch it out with this hatch. No, get back in here. There we go. Boom, 100 kilograms of coal. So we can see right there, and I can actually reproduce this experiment many times now, is that these hatches convert that resource at a 1-to-1 ratio. So 100 kilograms of dirt, 100 kilograms of coal. What else do you want to put down there, right? Not copper liquid. That would be terrible. How about copper solid? Or fertilizer, right? We're actually going to be experiencing fertilizer. Let's do that one. So there's some fertilizer. If we dig this up, you can see I have 100 kilograms of fertilizer. And then after 2 bites, boom, 100 kilograms of coal. Simple. So now when we look at puffs, you can see this puff right here has 662 grams of polluted oxygen inside of it. So when it sucks up some more, it now has 1.2 kilograms. And then when it poops out its little slime, this slime is the exact same size that it sucks it in. So these animals are converting everything at a 1-to-1 ratio. So that's really important. And that kind of gets the basics out of the way as far as the animals are concerned. Now, when we have piles of polluted dirt, as was mentioned by several people who were down there in the comments, polluted dirt gives off roughly around 800 milligrams worth of oxygen when it only has about 8 kilograms in the pile. Now, as we can see here in this pile, you can see that the numbers that it's giving off is 913 milligrams. If we look down at this pile that has 188 kilograms, it's giving off 2 0.7 grams, and then it kind of dips down a little bit to something else, but usually it's at 2.7. I think if we go over here to the left and we'll find another. Okay, so if we look over at this pile here, once I actually get it into some liquid, we'll see that it's giving off 7.9 grams a second. So depending on the size of the pile of polluted dirt, it's going to give off more polluted oxygen. Now, I'm not sure about that exact ratio. I'm not sure how much that actually functions, but it's important because these mealwood plants, every 6 cycles, produce 8 kilograms of polluted dirt. Now, it doesn't decay. Not all of that decays in 6 cycles, so that it continuously builds up. So these piles of polluted dirt will continue to increase in their quantity, and therefore they will emit more and more polluted oxygen over time. Okay, so in some of my previous experiments, I've already proven to myself that hatches do not eat other ingredients that you can consume, nor do they eat leaves or seeds or anything like that. They will eat food, but they don't produce coal from them. I tested it all out on the little hatch up there. So Bane asked the question, and that's actually good to know. And that's also what we saw in the first experiment. However, this is all based on the current build of the game, so do bear in mind the actual date. Okay, so one of the other ideas for producing the polluted oxygen rather than letting the plants rot is obviously use morbs. If you can find morbs, I mean, by all means, use them. That isn't necessarily the purpose of this experiment, but everything that applies to these plants can also apply to morbs as well. You can compound it all together and make it however big as you want. But for right now, I'm going to focus on the mealwood plants. So, like we were seeing over here with Octo Jones, what he has is a couple of puffs down here and then morbs on top of that. So what that's doing is producing the polluted oxygen and then producing the slime, and the slime can get stored and used elsewhere. Another really interesting thing is how he's doing his puffed corrals. So we'll actually look into that, and which is exactly where this came from. So thank you for that, Octo Jones. That's pretty cool. So if we look at my farm here on the left, I have 100 mealwood plants set up, which is not terribly unreasonable. This is doable, especially if you're using it as a food source for a while. It's a lot, but you know, it really isn't that bad, considering how easy it is to grow mealwood. There's really nothing to it. In its current state, if we were to consume whatever polluted dirt was left over and not actually build that quantity up, it would take 120 of these plants to produce enough polluted oxygen for one normal duplicant each day. So that's kind of our base number right there. It would take 120. So with that in mind, what all can we do with this? Last time we ate it and we turned it to coal. That wasn't all that terribly useful, but you guys were saying, what if we turn it to slime? We'll feed a biodistiller. That biodistiller can then go to an algae deoxidizer or terrarium, and then the polluted water that comes off of that can actually go to a water purifier and then be used as water, or goes to an electrolyzer if all we wanted to do was produce oxygen. However, you can also go to the other method, which is, to a fertilizer maker, and then the fertilizer then can be eaten by a hatch, turned into coal. Coal can run the generator, creating carbon dioxide, and that also a byproduct of power. That is then scrubbed, turning it back into polluted water, running to a fertilizer, back to coal, and you end up in a really big circle. And trying to solve a circular dependent equation was a lot of fun by hand until I figured out how to do it with the Excel spreadsheet and the little check mark that just solved all my problems because it did it by itself. And then there's also another crazy method that you could do, and you could potentially turn this stuff into oil and start producing plastic from mealwood. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and explore today how much clean oxygen, if all we want to do is get clean oxygen out of the system, how much can we actually get? We've made some sort of giant circle, but that's what we're coming back to. So in order to do that, we're just going to use this little spreadsheet right here. So up here at the top is all of the different equipment, what it can consume or output at its rates, and then I copy this, I put it down here, and then I figure out what essentially my cycle rate of that equipment is going to be. This will predict all of the results down here, whether I have positives or negatives depending on what I'm using up. So I try to balance all of the equations, and it'll also predict how much power the system will have at the end of whatever cycle it is trying to work through. So to start my equation off, I'm going to use the external variable, which is my polluted oxygen that's coming from the polluted dirt inside of my farm. So that is 84 grams a second, or 50.4 kilograms a day. So to start things off, I'm going to feed all of that to the puffed. So I will use my equation here. So this will be how much do I have divided by how much can I process. Now for the puffs, I'm just using a 1-to-1 number right there. That is not how many puffs I actually need. I just don't really care because they convert at a 1-to-1. So I just stick enough puffs in there to make it work. At some point, maybe I'll solve that problem. So now I get rid of my polluted oxygen, but I produce slime over here. So now I have 84 grams a second of slime. So we're going to feed that to the Algae Distiller. So I'll do the exact same calculation I did before, just using what I have divided by what I can do. That results in a 0.14. So out of the Algae Distiller right there, I'm getting 56 grams a second of polluted water. Now, polluted water is super useful because you can do so much with it. We know that we've done algae power plants, algae processing power plants in the past. We've also processed natural gas down to polluted water, and that gives us loads and loads of power because you can kind of run many fertilizer makers off of it and just kind of keep going round and round. So polluted water is awesome because you can do so much with it. The other byproduct we have is algae. So we have 28 grams a second of algae. Now there's two things you could do with this. You can go to a tranium and get more out of it, or you can go to a deoxidizer. In this case, I'm going to go to a deoxidizer because I don't got it back. I'm going to go to a deoxidizer to start things off rather than go to the terrarium because that uses a lot of water. So we'll keep this water friendly this time. So the Algae Deoxidizer will run at 5% of its total capacity, therefore generating 15.2 kilograms a day. So it's a little oxygen, but not bad. Right now we're using up about 23 watts on average. And you can see the kilojoules a day calculated right there as well. Okay, so that still leaves polluted water. So in this experiment, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to process the polluted water back into clean water. So I could either do this with steam, or I could just run this through a water distiller. And in this case, I'm actually going to run it through a water distiller because a water distiller will give off dirt, which you could either use to make more farms, or you can turn it to coal. But as you can see, I now have 56 grams a second of water, but I'm also producing 2.24 grams of dirt, or 1 kilogram of dirt a day, which isn't a lot, but hey, it's more than nothing. So now we can see here that the water distiller, well, it won't run very much. We're talking about 1% or potentially less than that. It just kind of rounds the numbers right there for our visual sake. But we are producing clean water. It only uses up a little bit of sand. We're talking 6 kilograms a day just to kind of scrub that stuff up. Not real bad, but it's also producing dirt out, which is also useful. Matter of fact, you can heat up dirt and get sand out of it if you can get it hot enough as well. But I don't use the water distiller all that often because you don't really need to use the sand. So you can get around this pretty easily. So in this case, I'm going to feed that dirt to the hatch. So that zeroes out the amount of polluted dirt I have, but gives me some coal. Now that coal is run over to the coal generator, which I've already kind of done the number for, and that coal generator will in turn produce a little bit of carbon dioxide. Not much, but a little bit. So we can feed that to a carbon skimmer, and it will produce more polluted water. So that polluted water now needs to be factored back into the algae distiller. So I have to add that to that calculation. Now this is where things got complicated with these circular dependencies. I'm not exactly sure if that's the proper term, but there it is, boom. So now that became slightly more effective and things started to feed each other. So that brings us to the end of the calculation as far as this method of operations. So in the end, I'm going to be left with 15 kilograms of oxygen a day. I'm going to use up 33.6 kilograms of water, and I'm also going to use 6.7 kilograms of sand a day. So I'm using essentially sand and water to create a little bit of oxygen, which is a different way of producing oxygen, but hey, nevertheless, that's what's up. The amount of power that's used on average is about 23 watts, so it's not a lot of power. So if I actually compare this to some of the other methods, such as running that to like a fertilizer synthesizer, there's actually other methods that are going to be more effective. We'll explore those in future videos. So based on what I've seen over here, I can see all the different types of equipment I need. I need the carbon skimmer, the water distiller, algae distiller, algae deoxidizer, a puffed and a hatch, and a cold generator. So I got to figure out how to arrange all of that so it makes sense. So I think what I'm going to do to arrange this is I'm going to put my puffs right up here, because that seems like a good idea. Now if you limit their motion as far as how far they can move side to side and how far they can move up and down, they will actually produce more slime because they're going through the animation more often. This was explored in a video I did, which was infinite oxygen with puffs. Now, that was an older video when they didn't actually consume the polluted oxygen, which they do now. So that video no longer applies, but yes, you can use puffs in that arrangement. So they actually produce more. No, I keep messing up the stupid door. Come on now. Alright, so there we go. All the puffs have been moved to the top. Now we can kind of just reduce the amount of space they got. Okay, so I'm going to feed a little bit of a pool here. That'll be 3 tiles wide, so I have a drip, a switch, and a pump all in that same spot there. Now I could calculate for the pump, but it's going to be such an insignificant amount of power that it's not even worth it. So I'm not even going to worry about it. How about that? Pump, liquid pump, bam. Switch for the power. Hydro switch, there we go. And the wire to run that. Here's our main power for everything, just right down there. So we'll do it this way. That way you could also use this for multiple things. So you could actually have like a little bit of a bottle emptier right there if you had polluted water elsewhere. And this really kind of goes for everything. I mean, just because you have this farm doesn't mean that these chunks of equipment can be used for more than this. I mean, that's when it comes to any of these experiments, you can set this equipment wherever you want inside of your base. As long as it goes from here to here to here, you'll still get the same results plus whatever else you're doing inside your base. So if you have multiple systems, as far as like kind of the grand idea of the full processing plant, no matter what you have, you can turn it into whatever you need. Sort of idea that you guys have been kicking around for a little while. That's essentially what I'm talking about. Alright, so water purifier, there we go. Now if I use my liquid pump, we can just go ahead and do this number. Now really, I would probably want to put this somewhere else because the duplicant to fill up the water distiller has to hop through a puddle, which isn't all that great. But whatever, you get the idea. Alright, so now I need to feed that coal to a coal generator. Alright, so here's what I'll do. Since I'm not going to create a lot of carbon dioxide, since I have a carbon skimmer right here, I'll actually just create a bowl, so therefore it stays down low. And another thing I thought of that would actually be quite useful is when the liquid is coming out of this piece of equipment, it's going to have a set temperature, so I might as well take advantage of that as much as I can to cool down the equipment in the area that it's going to be in. It's not running all the time, so I'll kind of do that number. So when it comes out of the carbon skimmer, I'll do this sort of number, kind of snake around, and just try to cool the gas in that area, and also in that same effort actually cool the equipment as well. You know what? I had this all wrong, didn't I? If I look at the equation here, what I'm actually getting is oxygen, and I'm getting water. See, this is 56 grams of water. So I'm actually producing water out of this farm. For some odd reason, I thought I was taking it away. So I'm converting sand, essentially, into water and oxygen. Oh, that's way more useful than I thought it was. I'm going to consume part of that with the carbon skimmer in order to clean out the coal, but I'm actually getting water out of this system, and a decent amount, which means before we're done with this, we can actually feed that to an electrolyzer. Crap, which means you need a hydrogen generator. Crap, which means more equipment. See what I'm talking about? There's so much you can do with just a little bit of polluted dirt. It's ridiculous. So now I have a net zero on my water, but I also have 75 grams a second of oxygen. So I have enough for a duplicant with diver's lungs. So I can support one duplicant with diver's lungs, and I now have a little bit of hydrogen, right? Which means I should be able to balance the amount of power I'm using in this system. Maybe even come out ahead. So the hydrogen generator, means bam, just like that. I'm now producing power. Not much. We're talking 12 kilojoules a day, or an average of 20 watts, but that's enough for a light bulb. Oh. Enough for a light bulb. So rather than feeding, we could feed a light bulb, which means instead of feeding an algae deoxidizer, we could feed it to a terrarium. What would that be like? What does the terrarium look like? That algae, where are you? So an algae terrarium would produce, without a bonus, would produce 37.3 grams a second of oxygen. Now you can give yourself, I think, a 10% boost if it has light on it. And if I zero out the deoxidizer, I'm now producing 87 grams a second. However, the water used is 168 kilograms a day. So considering this is a system that is meant to be mostly passive, I think I'll stick with the deoxidizer. But that was interesting. Okay, so I think I have all of the equipment now. I've got my deoxidizer, I've got a battery, I've got the electrolyzer, the pump that's going to feed that, the pump that's over there, which I didn't account for in the electric calculations. So even though it says net 20 watts, there's a chance that some of that could be used up by the gas pumps, even though I kind of doubt it, because those things are going to run like once a day. And, well, I mean, this gas pump actually might run a little bit more than that. This over here runs to that, runs over here, runs to that, runs to this, runs to that. But the liquid pipe doesn't run back. Oh, but I can do this for the first time. Deconstruct these liquid pipes. And then use liquid valves with the exact value typed into them, so I get the exact right amount of water going to each source. This is wild. Simple, right? This is super simple, isn't it? Here I thought day one was going to be the easy day, but now I'm running like everything. Yeah, no problem. Just set this up in your base. It'll be easy. Why wouldn't you do this? And you know what? Just for good measure, let's use a gas filter. Because why not? Oh, we gotta kick it off, so we need a manual generator. Luckily, I've got space for that right over there. Alright, so let me queue up all of these plants to get up and running at the exact same time. There's not very much, not enough gas inside of here for these plants to grow right now, so they should be planted, but they should be planted in such a way that they're not able to grow. What I might want to do is actually reduce the amount of puffs I have in this space, because there's a good chance that those puffs could actually suck all of the polluted oxygen, or too much polluted oxygen, out of this space. Now don't you go... What are you even... Oh, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you, May. Stop trying to do what you're doing. So I guess that brings up an interesting thing here, is that if you do have other resources, right, like external coal or external slime, duplicants are going to want to deliver to the system. Even though I'm trying to do like a synthetic test, you know, those numbers are what those numbers are going to be, but that doesn't mean your duplicants aren't going to run in here for like all sorts of other stuff and use the equipment that's available. So, all right, so let's test this equipment here. I'm going to fill this entire area with 1 kilogram of polluted oxygen, and I will not introduce my puffs until I have at least meal lice on the ground, because at that point then the reaction should start and it should continue to run, hopefully indefinitely, if everything goes well. Alright, so I'm getting food that should be decaying, and it should be decaying right about now. Yep, all sorts of warnings. 5% now, 4, it's dropping quickly, 3, I'm running the game as fast as I can run it, and boom, whole bunch of rot piles. Oh, and all of this is rotted over here. Oh, that's not good. Now my dupes are gonna starve. Alright, so now these should all turn into rot piles, and boom, now I'm producing all of that polluted oxygen now. Whoa, 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 slow down, game. There we go. So that's 847 milligrams a second here, just all puffing away at the exact same time. So you can see here the polluted oxygen starting to increase. So let's start this off with just 1 puffed in this area. If I can get him there. There we go. Okay, so now that I've let this run for a little while, it looks like just having 1 puffed seems like a good way to go, because the amount of slime I should have in this spot should actually be quite significant. Yeah, so you can see right there, that's 200 kilograms of slime. So for those of you guys that are looking to move something to a spot, well, that's one method right there of condensing down polluted oxygen into slime that can then be converted to a hatch, like we saw in the picture from Twitter. Alright, so now she fed the Algae Distiller. So this is the first time the system is starting to run now. So we can see here that we're moving, contains 400 grams of polluted water that's now dripping into that space. Game's running a little bit fast. I think I'll slow it down. There we go. And she's now populating the sand. So that's all good to go. Now it's 200 kilograms, so that'll last a good long time. And everything's running, so this is sweet. Hey, now that is supposed to be... Oh, maybe I already got enough. Yeah, check that out. Okay, so for the first time here, I saw this happen. She took a little bit of algae from the Algae Distiller, fed it to the deoxidizer, and now I'm producing oxygen. So you can see the oxygen in this space continues to go up. I think I started right around 300 grams, so now we're up to 800. So that's pretty awesome. I don't have enough hydrogen up here though, just yet, in order to start powering this guy, which will then feed enough power to the battery. The second thing is the Water Distiller. Why aren't you running? Oh, there it goes. Oh. Okay, you know what it is? It's because this puffed right now is continuing to draw the polluted oxygen in this space down. It's actually continuing just to pull more and more polluted oxygen out of here. So it's actually running at a higher than estimated pace. Look at me, it's just sucking it straight out of the puff. Look at that. So this puff is running a little bit too quickly for everything that's being given off. Maybe at some point this will stabilize though, and then I'll actually get the calculated amount. Okay, so I'm seeing something here that that is a problem. This puff is causing these plants right here to stall because it's just pulling too much gas out of the air. Not to mention the duplicant kind of likes to walk in this space as well. The polluted oxygen, see, it just keeps continuing to go down a little bit. So now I'm getting growth halted. This puff is just probably not in the best place. It should probably be a little bit farther away, just so it takes longer for that polluted oxygen to get up there or something like that. See, some sort of way to restrict it. Or maybe it lives in a room all by itself, and when the door opens, that polluted oxygen flows in. Some way to avoid using a pump to pump all of this polluted oxygen to your puff. I don't know. There might be a solution there. But at the end of the day, again, I don't think this is the most effective method for using a farm, but it is interesting to see that, yes, you can produce oxygen, and as you can see, I've produced a fair amount. I have to constantly put more and more vacuum into this space in order to actually just let the algae run and all the rest of the equipment in here making, more oxygen. So it works. It produces oxygen from mealwood. So as you could expect, that is one method to get from polluted oxygen to oxygen, and I think it was an interesting exploration into like pre-calculating a large system like this and just kind of scratching a little bit deeper on what all can you do with the polluted dirt or letting things rot and all of that stuff. So hopefully you found this video somewhat informative, helpful, or interesting down there. Let me know in the comment section below. We'll explore this a little bit more and try to maybe turn it into more of a power plant or try to get some other things out of it, maybe potentially plastic in the future. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, because I like this. This is an interesting system because it's very, very basic. The mealwood's like the starting block for just about everything you need. And the crazy thing is you can use every single piece of equipment in the game, just about, and run something off of it at some point or another. So that's pretty cool. So hopefully guys have enjoyed this episode. If I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Have a great day, guys. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar.